Good evening and welcome to News Central TV. My name is Mazino Appeal. Here are some stories making rounds beyond the continent. Now, a powerful earthquake struck Russia's remote Far East early Wednesday, triggering tsunami waves across the Pacific Ocean and prompting widespread evacuations. Waves reaching up to 4 meters were recorded, prompting tsunami warnings in several countries, including Japan and the United States. In Japan's northern Hokkaido region, local residents moved to higher ground as nearly 2 million people were advised to evacuate coastal areas. Authorities activated emergency response plans and evacuation centers were opened to accommodate those fleeing low-lying zones. Transportation services were briefly disrupted, with some train lines and flights delayed as a precaution. Despite the scale of the quake and tsunami threat, no injuries or property damage had been reported by early afternoon, and warnings were gradually lifted as conditions stabilized. Now, joining me to further discuss this is Professor of University of Manchester, Mukesh Kapila. He joins us from Geneva in Switzerland. Professor Mukesh, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining this evening, sir. So, grand. The earthquake is one of the most powerful we hear that's ever recorded. How rare are 8.8 magnitude earthquakes, and what makes this one particularly significant, sir?
Well, I think earthquakes of the magnitude of 8 or higher happen perhaps twice a year, somewhere or other in the world. And so they're not infrequent. This one is particularly serious because it was relatively close to land and relatively shallow. It was only about 20 kilometers deep in the ocean, and only about 100 kilometers or so from the shore, though those figures need to be confirmed. So that makes the actual quake itself quite powerful.
So this is all the way in Russia, and we've seen tsunami alerts across the Pacific from Japan to New Zealand, and even in the US, the West Coast. So how does an event like this actually have such an impact on other countries?
Well, I think thanks to that terrible quake and tsunami that everyone will remember off the coast of Indonesia in 2004, and I was there afterwards, in the immediate afterwards on disaster relief operations, the world has built up a network of tsunami early warning system with centers all over the world, all around the globe, and those automatically kick into action whenever an earthquake takes place and estimate the magnitude of a possible tsunami, and the alert then goes out globally. And this is one of the few examples of genuine international collaboration. And so I think, as shown here, the system worked brilliantly in alerting everyone.
So now let's talk about damage, Professor Kapila. So in Russia, 13-foot waves hit Severokurilsk. What kind of long-term damage are we looking at here? What kind of long-term damage can these kinds of waves cause to infrastructure?
Well, it's a little bit of a mystery, I must confess, that despite the power of this earthquake, the amount of damage has been very little. And 13-foot waves are awesome if you happen to be facing them, but quite honestly, they're not that high compared to, for example, the Indian Ocean tsunami waves, which are about 4 times that amount, or the waves seen off the coast in Japan when it had one of its terrible earthquakes only a few years ago. So the amount of damage done is remarkably little. And as far as I know, no one has got killed. A few buildings got damaged. And this is an attestation to the early warning system, which was obviously successful, as also the robustness of the buildings that were in the earthquake zone.
So evacuation orders affected nearly 2 million in Japan alone. Now, are these mass evacuations becoming more efficient, or do challenges still exist?
They're certainly becoming more efficient. It's one of those things that one would rather not have to become efficient at. But I think with so many earthquakes and tsunamis in recent years, inevitably lessons have been learned. And early warning systems have improved, though in the case of the Turkey earthquake, the systems didn't work so well. But generally speaking, yes, I think populations are more aware, more educated. Early warning systems are working better, And I think there is a process for evacuation where people can go to, and every major town or city in a particular vulnerable belt would have a place to go to. Every household would know where to go to in case an alert sounds. So I think progress on that front.
Yeah, so Professor Kapila, one final question here. So given the widespread alerts, is the Pacific region becoming more vulnerable to seismic activity? Is this what we're seeing, or is this within expected tectonic behavior?
Well, it's difficult to know whether the Pacific Rim is getting more active. It looks that way, but I think what happened just now is within tectonic behavior in the Pacific Rim. And in that sense, what usually happens is we have a cluster of earthquakes. So we might have 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 over a short period of time, 2 or 3 years perhaps. And then as the plates kind of grind down to a stop, we have a quiet period. So in short, I don't think there is an evident trend that we're having more earthquakes, at least in the medium term. This is just normal part of tectonic activity in that part of the world.
Normal tectonic activity. Well, Professor Mukesh Kapila, I want to say thank you very much for joining us and giving us some insight into what's happening even deep in the Pacific Rim. Thank you, sir.